Perfect. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for being here. And Max, thank you very much for the kind introduction. At Deka, we started our blockchain ventures somewhere in 2016 already. At the time, we were trying to bring securities lending transactions with traditional stocks and fixed income bonds on a blockchain. We found out that worked. But we did not meet huge mass adoption. Later on, a couple of years later, we had the first digital bonds. That was actually helped by the Digital Securities Act in Germany. Germany was one of the first movers with respect to digital assets. And we issued our first digital bonds. And after that actually proved to be successful, we created a startup called Swiat, which is being tasked with rolling out some blockchain-based digital assets infrastructure. We have been one of the more active participants during the ECB trials. I think we did something like 400 to 500 million in transactions. Overall, I think during the ECB trials, we had around 1.5 billion in central bank money being transferred between the different participants. We had more than 50 banks or capital markets participants during the trial. So this was considered to be successful, and we created and tried out a couple of different digital assets, Namensschuldverschreibung, private placements, repo, sec lending products. I think all in, we had something like 15 use cases. Today, I'm excited to show you or to talk a little bit about some of the things that we have learned.
Beseitigt ist, können wir dann unseren Fahrtschritt fortsetzen. Sobald dies der Fall ist, werde ich Sie dann umgehend durch die Lautsprecher informieren.
I think somebody on mute.
Sorry, I muted Teresa.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so these are some of the things that we did. Yeah, we have now a crypto custody and a crypto registrar license. And the idea is that eventually we will have all kinds of different capital markets product on one unified ledger. But I think that this is still a long way to go. And as I said, today I'm talking a little bit about some of our observations and some of our experiences. One thing which I felt when I discussed digital assets and blockchain with some people from the DeFi crowd, people don't like regulation, and I do understand that. Yeah? I think bankers also do not like regulation, but in modern capital markets, this is just something you cannot avoid. And you may not appreciate them, and sometimes I think it's also obvious that regulation is not very smart. I actually wrote some articles on smart regulation, and I can confidently say that much or larger parts of our regulation is not smart. But at the same time, regulation maintains some sort of an order. It protects market users and it enforces standards. And I understand that people also from the DeFi world sometimes are very frustrated with bankers. But we had actually an episode in the early days of digital assets. A bank came up with one of the first digital and crypto securities, and the client said, "Okay, that's wonderful. I would like to buy this asset. Can you be the depot bank for it?" The bank said, "Yes, that shouldn't be a problem because we are also offering something like this for other clients." Then the regulator stepped in and said, "This is some sort of digital crypto custodian activity that you are doing." And I was like, "Well, I think we are doing this as a depot bank." And they said, "No, this is actually a crypto custodian activity." And then the bank actually found out that they were doing non-permissioned activities. And that in the bank is a huge issue. Because people can go to jail for doing things in banks for which they do not have the license. And this actually happened relatively early on in our market. And I think it also sets a stage for many people in the banking industry to say, okay, we have to collaborate and we have to work together with regulators, because otherwise we are getting our banks into trouble, but we are also getting ourselves into some trouble. Yeah, so this was probably one of the first lessons that we in the marketplace and the bank in particular learned. Yeah, you have to take care of this watchdog. And for DeFi participants and everybody else, the idea always should be that somehow you get into the perimeter of trust. There are even some books written on these kind of things, but the basic idea is if you adhere the rules, if you adhere the regulations, and you are inside the perimeter of trust, and then only banks and asset manager will find it easy to do business with you. And when you have entered into this parameter of trust, you actually have to understand the landscape. And even as bankers, we sometimes get this wrong. For instance, at the beginning of the Swiat startup, we were also looking for investors. And we were in discussions with a large French bank, whether they would like to join us, and talking about all the benefits that our blockchain would offer to them. And then they came up after a while and said, yeah, but if I understand this correctly, you would be disrupting depot banks, and we are one of the biggest depot banks. There's no way that we can actually join a consortium in blockchain and then start disrupting traditional businesses which are quite big at our bank. So then again, this was, and we had a couple of these instances where we were talking to people and had not 100% understood probably ourselves whom we would be disrupting with our blockchain and who would be benefiting from our products. And that actually leads us to the question of tokenization. We actually found out tokenization is not an end in itself. And the fact that you can probably tokenize everything does not necessarily mean that you should. We also looked into tokenization of shares. We missed out on the CFD revolution. And at the beginning, we thought, okay, fractional ownership of shares could be something where we could entice retail clients to join us on a blockchain. And we had a couple of benefits. So the idea was that if you really have fractional ownership of shares, then you don't have any counterparty risk. You don't have the brokerage risk, for instance. And you can participate in corporate action. But actually, we found out, and I think we probably know that from the CFD revolution, retail clients are more or less agnostic to issue risk, and they are not really interested in participating in corporate actions. But if you take these two items away, then actually you just compete with CFDs more or less on a level playing ground, but you probably have increased your cost without marketable benefits for the end user. So this can be a problem. So at some stage, we put this on the shelves and said, okay, we probably take a look into this at a later stage. The same actually happened with our digital collateral protocol, securities lending for traditional securities on the blockchain. Actually, a good idea. We have a couple of companies specializing in some of these services. And the idea is that you have immediate settlement, and you have full transparency, and you have no fails. But actually, if you take, let's say, bonds, or if you take US Treasuries, or if you take main index shares, then you already have 97 to 99% settlement efficiency. So this means in 99 or 97% of all transactions, you don't have any problems. And actually, if you then come up and say to the trader, you can do this business now on a blockchain and you have 100% settlement efficiency, but you have to pay me 4 basis points, then in securities lending, the trader would tell you, I'm usually making 16 to 20 basis points in a securities lending transaction. So if you take away 4 basis points for addressing a 2 or 3% problem, I'm not willing to pay for it. And this is actually why we had a solution. And the solution actually also did live up to our expectations. But there was no client acceptance for that. And the reason being that those people who should transact on the blockchain did not really own the problem of settlement efficiency and were not willing to pay for that. And then tokens are not a standalone product, but they're only part within an existing ecosystem. So this is actually a discussion that we had with many of our asset managers and also other asset managers in the city. So you can come up with all kinds of digital placements, Namensschuldverschreibung, Sparkassenbriefe, real-world assets, also even commodities. We are talking about all of these things with a couple of people. You will have atomic settlement. You have full digitalization of the issuance process. So in the primary markets, you actually create a structure which really delivers value, and people are also seeing that it does create value, but you lack actually secondary market liquidity. I think we have been talking about secondary market liquidity for a couple of years. People thought that this should be relatively easy. We also are committed to make markets in the tokens and the digital assets that we create. But actually, secondary market liquidity is a result of network synergies. So this is something that you cannot pull out yourself. So you have to work together with MTFs, with exchanges, with market makers, with brokers, with investors and issuers. And actually, when we talk even to our own funds, they actually, at the moment at least, would say, we can't buy your digital assets because with respect to our needs in secondary market liquidity, you are not where we need you to be. So currently, this is why we are talking to a couple of MTFs, OTFs, and trading partners to achieve a more institutional setup for market liquidity. But at the moment, we are just not there. And it doesn't help if you create in the primary markets a financial token. And even if you are making the market for it, this is not enough. This usually does not fulfill the requirements of wholesale liquidity that asset managers need to have. This is actually why I had also this kind of small picture here. Liquidity is an emerging feature of a complex system. So if you have many people in a market, then by definition, you have more liquidity. Liquidity begets liquidity. So it's a little bit chicken egg, but I think at the moment, it's also obvious that we are not where we need to be in order to make asset managers, for instance, happy to take on these products on their balance sheets. And then we had also discussions with many people about this new technology and what we try to achieve. And I think relatively early on, we learned also probably the hard way, people are not that much interested in technology. So if you tell them, okay, I have a blockchain and I can tokenize something, and now you can run your own node. And then we had numerous people who said, okay, I'm probably happy to try this out on the blockchain, but I'm not happy to run my own node. And also in banks, that is understandable to some extent, because you have to have 100% overview of how the code actually works, and the regulator will ask you how you can ensure that the code always works in a way that is compliant with local law. And that is something which is, in particular with public blockchains, sometimes a question which is not easy to answer. And this is also why we found out that some people are happy to run a node, but many people actually just want to have a service. They want to have a service where you are running the nodes, and then you are acting as a depot bank. And ideally, you are acting as a depot bank in a way that people are also seeing all their traditional assets, and then they're seeing the crypto assets, more or less all on the same screen. So what people want to have are products. They don't buy a token because it's being run on blockchain. I think we are past that point. People want to have products that works and that create a benefit when they're using it. Examples are you don't want to become an ML machine learning engineer. You just want to chat with ChatGPT, and you're surfing the internet, and you don't want to become a specialist in HTML. Yeah, and I think this is something that we also have to learn. People are looking for clearly defined products with clearly defined benefits, and not for a piece of technology. They're usually agnostic to these kind of questions. And then actually we also discussed a little bit the concept, or we were discussing that again and again inside Deka. So what is a natural transaction? And I usually start with what is a not so natural transaction. A not so natural transaction is the board member wants to do a transaction because he actually has heard that blockchain is a cool thing, and he thinks that in order to show that innovation is something that people care about at his institution, he wants to have a blockchain transaction. And then actually he goes to the trader. The trader does a blockchain transaction, but then actually he focuses on his own work again. He has different goals. He has different targets. He has revenue targets to meet. And the blockchain transaction in this regard is probably just a distraction from his usual work. And this is why many of the transactions that we have seen remained one-off. There is no scalability. When the transaction is done, the board member writes an article and makes an announcement. So the way a natural transaction works is a little bit different. It's from the bottom up. A trader or an asset manager wants to do a transaction on the blockchain because it has clearly defined benefit. He goes to the board member, he gives them money for the implementation of the new products, and then he does the transaction. The transaction is scalable, and people are getting comfortable with respect to the risk. We actually have seen that partly with respect to the ECB trials. When we did the first transactions, people were doing something in the realm of 1 million to 5 million notional sizes. Then it went up to 30 to 50 million. The last transactions that we did were in the realm of 300 million and else. But you need to have people on the ground benefiting directly from it to create scalability and walk away from the one-off transactions. I think we're not there yet, but we are probably getting there. So summarizing the above, if you want to be relevant for wholesale markets, you have to be cognizant of the regulator. You ideally have to cooperate or probably even co-innovate with the regulator to bring your products to your clients. You have to understand the network of your different financial agents. And you can actually tokenize everything. So it's not about tokenization, but you have to focus on real world benefits. And I think what is also important from our learning, you have to find people who are also happy to pay for your tokens. It's relatively easy for any manager to just say, okay, I'm happy to do this kind of transaction. But if he's serious and if there's some real benefits, then he's also happy to pay for it. And this is something which is also important when we do financial innovation. Tokenization is not a standalone product, but happens in the financial ecosystem, and clients want products and not technology. And the last one is we have to find the natural transaction asset in the realm of digital assets. I think we're not 100% there, and I also think that 2025 will be a year in transit. There's still a lot to be done to get, let's say, hedges, derivatives, cash products, and assets on unified ledgers. We are not there yet, but 25 will certainly be very important to get us where we want to be. Thank you. And I stop sharing now.
Thank you very much, Michael. There have been some questions with regard to secondary market liquidity and how possibly also AMMs could play a role here. And the other angle would be as the DLT pilot regime. But considering the time and we want to stick to the schedule, I would kindly ask you to go or enter the comment section and maybe also provide your perspective directly into the comments.